Alright, so today we are going to hopefully get this whole page done using ink. Now, some of you just cried a little bit there when I opened up this big thing of ink right over, this page. But I gotta be honest, while at one point I did have that fear of ink, I can't say that I've got that anymore. I get a certain amount of excitement whenever I start on one of these pages. And I don't know, I think part of the danger, it's like this is my version of jumping out of a plane and skydiving. Although I don't know if I would ever actually skydive. I think that sounds rather stupid to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. But then again, someone might say it's rather stupid to ink a perfectly good page. Although, looking at my pencils, it's definitely not perfect. Definitely not. This, by the way, is page, I have no idea, of the Wytchborne. I want to say somewhere in the 40s. Probably 45. I'm kind of going about it in a haphazard way right now. You see I've started in 3 or 4 different spots. And it's just kind of... however I feel dictates where I'm going to go on the page. And as it relates to, smudging, I don't know, I think that affects... Because, well, let me explain it a little bit better. I've had people tell me they get really nervous when they watch my videos, because I'll start on sometimes the right-hand side of the page, whereas if you start on the left-hand side and work your way down, like so, or at least for right-handed people like myself, you're less likely to smudge the ink because your hand will not be hovering over it. But because I don't do that, it freaks some people out. And, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's part of the entertainment for me, but it is. I won't deny that it was kind of amusing to read about that the first time. That somebody said it was like, you gave me like an anxiety attack just watching you ink. And I get that, For a lot of people, inking is something that's very terrifying, but I can't get over the feeling of just like how fun it is. And I'm not even that good at it, but here we are. Alright. Should probably talk about what I'm thinking about with some of these lines. A lot of what I've already been thinking about has been kind of discovered in the penciling stage. That's why it's important to have a good penciling stage and a good idea of what you want already in those lines before you start on the permanent ones. I'm just spinning this page around. I hope it gets caught on camera. I'm trying. Oh. That's something I think this video will be different than the others I've done. In the long form section, the scripting video, I was very cerebral and in my head about things. Penciling one, I was 6, so I wasn't fully, I think, as lucid as I should have been when I was recording. But this one is just like, I don't know, I'm just sitting down and I'm inking, I'm having a good time. Not really thinking about too much of what I'm doing, but the cool thing about, if you've got good pencils to work on, you really don't have to think that much in the inking stage. Now, that's not to say let your mind go completely blank, but you do want to keep your mind open and active, in a sense of, rather than cluttering your thoughts with worry. I think I've talked before about Oh, don't know. I just poured a bunch of water on my desk. Trying to clean my nib over here with a spritz of water, and the spritz did not work. Ah, well. That's for the cleaner to worry about. I'm the cleaner. But you don't want to think, oh man, I gotta break out this brush, I gotta be really careful, you know, what about this, what about that? I'll just pull out the brush because you think that this scene needs a brush. Because you know that you want this whole area to be filled with black ink. And then just fill it with black ink with the brush. Or if the brush isn't working, you know, do something else. And I don't know, I kind of have a more reactionary approach rather than a analytical approach. I think that kind of comes out in this. And I think for some people who watch me draw, they find it kind of stressful. I don't know if it's stressful to watch me work or not. I don't pay attention. I just see the page getting done. At least when I'm working. Maybe watching this in editing, I'll be like, oh, I can see it. But I don't know. The main idea here, though, is you're communicating light and the absence of it. So take yourself into the negatives of a scene. Not emotional negatives or, you know, anything like that. More like the reverse of the light. You know, think around where those shadows are going to be and where they'll really pop. And then, as you get better, you'll start noticing where narratively they would be kind of cool. You'll be able to tell stories that way, even with the lighting. Ah, golly. I like this brush. It's a cheap brush I think I pulled out of a trash can. I have several in that, you know, collection. It's a trash collection of brushes. I might have bought this one. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Either way. In my opinion, brushes don't get bad. They get repurposed. This one, however, is in very good condition, so I'm inclined to say it might not be from the trash can, but then, I don't know. You dumpster dive? Yeah, a little bit. I did a lot in college. People would throw out old brushes, old cans, stuff like that. I'd take them. I didn't like paying for my materials, because I would use them to death and store them, wait for another schmuck to shuck his work in the yard. Hey, I almost rhymed. Hair is something I enjoy inking probably more than anything else. I think metal and leather are the only other materials that I like a little bit more. Even then. The thing about this character is she is, I was going to say African American, but this is a fantasy story, so there's no America or Africa. We'll say she's of the dark-skinned variety. And so because of that, her hair is, or at least as I've tried to make her hair a little bit more like what I've observed from people with that skin complexion. That amount of melanin, let's say. The darker melanin people of the world. But because of that, her hair is very fun to draw because it's all curling in a different direction. So I get more and more opportunities to go through with my brush. And you'll see how I start a strand is I'll have kind of an origin point here, like a triangle. In the middle, I'll probably have a couple of, you know, these squiggly lines. Here, let me draw one out for you. So this here is my strand. Taking my brush and just kind of outlining where I want it to be. And then here, kind of give it a little bit of shade. Some at the beginning here too. I don't want to fill it in too much. I want to let the bristles kind of display. But basically I'm giving a highlight. And I come down here. And I make sure to preserve that point. It's not my best, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about, hopefully. If it picked it up. It says it picked it up. But yeah, again, I love drawing her hair. Eleanor's hair is just so fun. I like Nira's hair too. Hers is fun. But because they both have black hair, I get to kind of go wild with the ink. But Eleanor especially, because she has that awesome hair to draw. Because of her ethnicity, of which I haven't really determined what that is in the fantasy world yet. I think it's, I know it's to the east on the map of Virthgar. I think it begins with a Z. I can't quite say it. It's at the tip of my tongue. Where she comes from. But yeah, I was sitting down and I was designing her character. And they're like, "Oh, you're gonna make her African American." I'm like, "Well, no, because she's neither African nor American." And they're like, "Yeah, but she's black." I'm like, "I know, but it's fantasy. There is no African Americans because there's no Africa or America. There are, however, people with black skin or dark brown." See, to me when I'm designing characters, like, that race doesn't really play into it. I don't want to get too political on the inking video, but if your character's only personality trait is that they are of a certain race, or they are of it's the same with like gender. If their only personality trait is that they're female or male or whatever, or disabled or whatever, that makes for a boring character. Eleanor, I knew what her character was before visually I decided to design her. And the fact that she was of a browner skin than the other characters maybe portrayed in this comic had nothing to do about her story or anything like that. I thought it was just, it'd be a way to show her in a way that was appealing, in a way that was interesting for her. Not as a villain, I don't think, so much as someone who, I don't know. How do I describe Eleanor without giving away all the spoilers? Essentially, what I'm trying to say is, she's not a villain because she's black, and she's not black because she's a villain. She is what she is because as I was designing her, I thought, this looks good for her. I think her character could embody these visuals. Way to not get, political on the stream there. Talk about black or white. I don't see people in black and white. I see them like chocolate. You ever hear that? There's dark chocolate. There's white chocolate. There's some mixed chocolate. At the end of the day, as long as it's sweet, it doesn't really matter. How about you stop talking about racism and start talking about ink? That's a good idea. Okay. So for the hair, you'll notice I'm using a large amount of brushwork. Sometimes I will pull out the dip pen for this, but for right now I am enjoying using the brush because it does get it gets the same amount of variety of lines that I would get from a dip pen, while covering more, because it's like what I'm going to do with a dip pen anyway is basically just mark out where I'm going to block in colors, or block in the shades. There's no coloring at this stage. Not for me, at least. I've seen some people, they color very early in their stage, even for their comics. And I respect that. I think that's very impressive, especially when you see their work and how vibrant it can be. When it comes to me personally, I am not good at that at all. I'm not very good at colors in a conceptual way. Like, I don't think about, oh, this scene's blue, this scene will be this scene will be primarily, one color or the other. I don't think that way. Whereas I've worked with people where they can see that from very early on in the process. And good for them. That's not so for me. Okay. Eleanor has a kind of interesting style about her, because when I was designing her, I knew that she would be living in a swamp. But I didn't want her to be like the typical bog witch. Her whole, character design and story is basically flying in the face of, what you would expect from a typical witch. And part of that comes from, her style. So her style is, very, would be considered in this world, almost trendy. And, so, she's got, this glove here, which isn't even, a full glove. It's kind of a... Let me swap pens out. It's like a mesh glove? I don't know. Not mesh. Fishnet? I think that'd be correct in saying that. And I got that from looking up kind of is it called Strega fashion? Which the idea is basically imagine yourself as an urban or a modern day witch. So I kind of took that idea, and then instead of modernizing it, I kind of fantasized a lot of the clothing and such that you'll see from that. But this glove just kind of remained in the design, because I thought it'd be kind of neat if she had this pattern. And in hindsight, probably not a good idea, just because it breaks the symmetry of her design, and she's already got complex everything when it comes to drawing her. So again, when I was designing her, I should have looked at what I was doing and been okay, no, we gotta simplify. Instead I was just no, this looks awesome. Her hair was gonna be complicated to draw, didn't care, it'd be fun. Her clothes were gonna be difficult to draw, didn't care, kept decided that was going to be fun to draw. And now I've drawn her for so many panels, I'm just could have at least taken one or two of the things and made them slightly easier, but no, was not to be. That's, I think, one of the big things out of this comic that I've learned. I get very excited when it comes to character design, because there's so many things that I want for that character, and I want them to feel unique, and I want them to feel interesting. But because I get excited about that and that process, oftentimes I will give myself a lot more work than is necessary when I'm drawing. Because when you're designing a character, you want, for comics, you want them to be easy to repeat. because you're going to be repeating them over and over and over and over again as you work. And she's just not one of those characters. She's difficult to draw. But again, I just have so much fun with her character. So a lot of times when I'm working with this kind of inking, I kind of just lay down these big dark shapes to start out with, and then slowly begin to pull away and do some of the lighter lines and some of the more finicky details and such. And it's kind of a balance between these two sides, where you've got the light and the dark of the scene kind of forming themselves and making themselves known. So here on this side of her face, I know the light is coming from this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that that is well represented. In some comics you would just like completely shade this side of the face, and maybe afterwards I will, but I kind of like this Rembrandt lighting that I've got going. You want to keep in mind that later it's going to be colored as well, and the colors can also display light and darkness. But you don't want to leave everything up to coloring or your colorist. I keep forgetting, some people aren't crazy like me and want to do the entire comic by themselves. It's not so much that I want to do it myself, it's that I have to. Nobody's nuts enough to work with me. I've offered a few people the opportunity to work with me. Not opportunity, the option, I should say. Haven't had any takers, and that might be because before they can say yes or no, I'm always like, just gonna let you know, I'm not a fun person to work with. That's not to say I don't, enjoy fun, or, I'm always axe to grindstone, but I do have, even in this, comic that I'm doing for free, very focused. I want things done a certain way, and I want things to, be as professional as possible, even if we aren't, even if I'm not, full-blown professional artist, or even getting paid for my work. I don't care. I want my work to look like it's been produced to the height of my ability. That's something that I always want in anything that I do. And sometimes, that's, in the indie scene or the unpaid scene, that's not something you can really get, so I often wind up working alone, and that's fine. Though I will say, coloring this comic is going to be a pain in the butt. If I can get somebody to do it, that'll be awesome. But then again, I do need to practice, so I'll probably just wind up doing it myself. It feels so long since I've done these pencils. It feels like it's been forever. Kind of has been. That's something about the process of these pages that I don't like. I did all the pencils, and then I did all the sketches, then I did all the pencils, then I did. Now I'm doing all the inks, and eventually I'll do all the colors, rather than taking a page and going through the entire process and having a fully finished page. I've been doing that now for DFD. Oh, it's such a better process for me. Now, it could be different for you. You could be one of those people where it's like you're fine with doing the steps. You don't want to get overwhelmed. But for me, I don't know, I like having a finished product by the end of the day, or at least something that's closer to finished. There's benefits in both, and I think, you know, you gotta discover your own work style and your own type of ideal environment, especially when you're still working for you on your own stuff. But you also got to be flexible. Let yourself discover some things. You want to use your wrist. I feel like I should talk about, you know, what I'm doing. I don't even really comprehend it, but you want to use the fact that your wrist moves in an arc, the fact that you up and down movement of your arm moves in an arc to make those round shapes. That way, you'll get these nice natural looking lines as I flub that line. Good example, Ruben. That's just great right there. Kind of roughing out these shapes. So what I think I'm going to do is take my brush pen. So she's casting a spell. I think the magic is going to be behind her hand. When it comes to coloring, I'll probably just put a texture or something behind her in Photoshop. If you know how your colorist is going to be working, or if you're the colorist, you can solve a lot of problems on the fly. If you know the entire process, this is why I think it's important to do at least a couple of pages by yourself, if not like a whole first comic by yourself, to understand the entire process and understand like what everybody on your team is going to have to go through. So that when you hand them a page, you're not just like, well, figure it out. You actually have an idea of what they're going to have to figure out, what they're going to have to go through. I think the lighting on that finger's wrong. Where's my whiteout? Here it is. Nice thing about whiteout like this is that it'll build up on the page so that you'll kind of know where you've made that mistake as you work along and you feel it with your pen. And you'll kind of think about, you'll be able to hopefully teach yourself in that moment rather than beat yourself up about it. I think that's something that I may, fail to explain. I know my drawing students were they weren't happy when I was like, oh, look, you've made this mistake. Now you'll know for next time. I see mistakes as opportunities to learn a lot of times because that's the optimist in me. Again, I'm not a huge optimist, but when it comes to drawing and artwork, there's so much to learn. There's such a large I mean, the entire process of drawing is learning how to draw for years and years and years. You're never going to learn everything. So take mistakes for what they are, which is learning experiences. If you've learned to identify a mistake, that means you're not ignorant about it. And that's awesome. That means that it's no longer something that you're going to struggle with. Or hopefully it won't be, as you learn how to identify it. Trying to decide if I like this mouth or not. I don't think I do. I think I'm gonna white out that top lip. Let me go ahead and get the nose in, since I'm here. Some people ask me why I use a pen and nib rather than like micron pens. Let me show you. So this is a 0.5 micron I've had for a little while. I'm gonna try to draw this tattoo line on her face. It's not bad. Came out pretty well. But it's, I don't know, it's a little flat when I draw with this. You can kind of see how it fades off at the end. I don't like that. It means that, you know, there's less ink in the reserves. And I'm gonna have to, you know, buy a whole new pen. Whereas, you know, this, I just dip. Get a nice line like that. I can control my line thickness a lot easier. I can control, just in general, the look of my comic. And that's, you know, at the end of the day, it does come down to control. And what I want is that level of control, that level of precision. And also, I think with dip pens, you have to think more. You have to be more present. You're not gonna just throw, you know, ink down willy-nilly like you would with another type of pen. I don't know what my eyes are doing, but like I feel like they're like opening like super wide as I'm drawing her face with her eyes super wide. Sometimes I do that, like mimic the expression of whoever and whatever I'm drawing. Yeah, those lips gotta go wide out. Don't need that much. As I work, something I'm becoming acutely aware of when I watch these recordings. The more I get into working, the longer the pauses are between things that I say. And that wasn't me acting, I just realized like how long those pauses work, but like legitimately I try to speak as cohesively as possible, but then like, because like even in college I would talk while I worked, but I didn't realize maybe it was really annoying for everybody when I would like start a sentence and then slowly fade out and then come back and then, you know, slowly fade out. I'm sure more than, well, I know they came up to me and straight up told me sometimes in college how annoying I was, but I could talk and I could work at the same time. In fact, it helped me because, you know, for some classes they wouldn't let us have music, and if I don't have music, I completely lose concentration and I'll start talking more often than not. I don't know what that is or why, but it's just what I do. That's why, like, anytime I record, even when I'm talking to you, I've still got music on. Okay. I'm doing so much digital inking. This is so nice. think I want to call that panel done. As I think more about it. Alright. Do I want to do the tiny panel or the big panel? Let's do the tiny panel. I hate tiny panels. I think the reason is because when I drew this, it was on a smaller piece of paper. So this whole scene was on a smaller piece of paper, and then I scanned it and I got it on a normal 11 by 17 piece of paper. Well, normal for comic making. But the problem is that doesn't change the fact that when I drew it, I was having to work, you know, closer to the paper than I prefer. Or, why is this broken? In a way that's, I don't know, not really conducive to detail or fine drawing. Some people thrive on smaller paper. I'm not that person. I could never be that person. Because to me, when I'm working on pages like this, it's so much easier for me to maneuver my hand, maneuver whatever drawing implement I'm using, regardless of the step, and get the result I want, having plenty of room to experiment or to try new things. And it's just, it bugs me when I don't have that. And I feel like when it comes to any other size other than 11 by 17, it's quality of work goes down immensely. So these mini panels always look like trash to me. I try to get them to be better, but I don't really have much to work with from the pencils, so some of them are going to get redone in Clip Studio when I scan this in. Some of them might just be crappy. And that's what gets me, because it's like there's been times where like I'm working on this and I'm like, I should just redo the entire page. But I don't have time to do that. It's been forever. Been almost a year since I started this project, and I'd like it to be done. I'd like to move on to either another Wytchborne comic or another project altogether. I don't know, maybe start drawing DFD full-time or doing Wytchborne full-time, either way. I don't know if I've ever talked about that on camera or not, but the reason I started working on DFD was because I had been working on Wytchborne so long, I was starting to get way too relaxed about it. And I was noticing that, like, I was getting very, very done with it, and not in a good way. And I needed to start thinking of it. Hold on a minute. I need that character design. Ah! Sorry, I forgot what her clothes look like. I'll edit that out later. One of the things, like, that I noticed about myself at that stage was I would just rush through whatever page I was doing. I didn't care about the ink. I didn't care about the pencils. It just, like, it's very, very quick. And it wasn't quick in like an efficient way. It's always quick in a sloppy way. That's something that you want to keep in mind of, and that you want to look at. Because it could look like, oh, I'm making a lot of process. I got this page done in half the time. Well, it could be that, or it could be because, you know, you got tired of drawing. And because you got tired of drawing, you just decided to kind of rush. Because you rush, now your page looks like crap. But you got done in half the time, right? It's a terrible thing. It's something that you never want to happen. Compromise on quality is just not acceptable. And I say that knowing that I've definitely done that before, and I'll probably wind up doing it again on this comic and DFD and everything else. But as I learn to identify that and see that, I'm learning things to do to prevent that from happening. And one of the things that I did for the sake of this comic was I decided to take a break and focus on another story. And that story turned into Death's Favorite Daughter, my other comic that I'm working on at the moment, that you'll see at, the short version of this video, or the whatever I call that video, comic inking, comic how-to, or whatever, comic blueprint. You made the series, you should know how to advertise it. But I came up with that, and I'm not saying every time you get bored of a comic, start a new comic. In fact, you should not do that, because you'll never finish a comic. But find a way to distract your mind for a little bit. Whether that's taking a day off, whether that's taking a walk, whether that's reading a book or watching a series that inspires you to create. I know that's a big one for me. That's why I've got so many comic books. Why I've got, so many series that I've started, and movies that I watch while I work, because, stuff like that helps me create and be creative when I watch other people and what they've done and all the passion that they've put into their projects. Now, again, don't just say, oh, I'm getting inspiration by slacking off and playing this video game for, 6 hours every day. I draw DFD for 6 hours most every day. But I also take good maybe 2-3 hours every week to, or especially on the weekends, play video games, watch a movie, something like that. Or if I need a little bit more time, because things are getting stressful, I'll watch something or listen to an album that I haven't listened to in a while, and I know that will help me out while I work on something that's maybe a little less taxing. Unfortunately, a lot of things that I like are now things that I record, so I kind of have to sit down and do them eventually because of the schedule, but alas, my life is a little different because of the electric eyes that are on me. Not that I regret it. I like sharing my process and my work with y'all. Every time I say y'all, I feel like I'm forcing it. But it's kind of a little bit of where I'm from coming out. Alright. So I'm okay with these being silhouettes, or silhouetted at least. I'm just kind of freehanding a lot of this down here because the pencils are not great. Also, I think a lot of this will be redone, and or the color will help with some of that. Again, don't expect the colorist in your life, you or anyone else, to solve your problems. When it comes to composition, when it comes to details or anything like that, that is your problem. If you're the inker, you should be looking at a pretty good product by the time you're finished. If you're not looking at something that you're happy with, it's not going to get better. It's really not. And so many times where, when I was learning to ink, I thought I would be able to get away with some things because of the way that, you know, the piece was colored or shaded later. Like they could hide my mistakes. And you just can't. There's something about having line work in a piece that just demands a certain amount of attention. I'm not saying that if you don't have line work, your piece isn't going to get as much attention, but what I am saying is, if you put ink to paper, people will notice things. If you don't completely, you know, spend your time in making that drawing look good and refining all those edges, you will, you know, that's where the buck stops. That's not something that can be addressed later. It's the intimidating thing about inking, I think, more so than necessarily the permanence of it. It's the level of reliance that a piece kind of has on it in the comic world. Now, obviously, some of that comes down to style. Not every piece, you know, if the inking will fall apart if the inking isn't completely perfect, but I do think that a fair bit of the composition and a fair bit of the artwork is pretty reliant on the inking. For me, the page is the inking. Everything else is kind of, you know, leading up to it or enhancing it. That's where my friend, who's a much better painter than I, would come up and kick me in the jaw. What do you mean? Color is way more important than that. It tells much more of a story. I know. But, you know, look at manga, how much they can get done with just black and white and a little bit of tone. You know, and if you look closely at the tone, it's usually just dots. It's not even... or texture. It's still falls within just black and white. So much you can tell. It's just how you move your pen, how you move your brush across the screen. Or in this case, paper. I'm working too much, too long on digitally, I tell you that right now. Can't tell if I want to use a brush for this or not. Kind of like the randomness of it, but at the same time... This is the spell, by the way. She's basically manipulating the lines around her to go after our hero down here. That's alright. I think Eleanor Thratch, this character, well, not character. I think her story's kind of interesting. and the way that so much of it's not really going to be shared in this comic. And yet, there's so much I don't want to tell because I don't want to spoil, but I think she's... I don't know. I'm kind of partial because I had to write for her, but I think she's got an interesting bit of background and connection to Dakin, our main character, that I didn't really expect when I first started. But as I wrote her, it made more sense. And it kind of caused her to come to life. Although I will say I had to kind of cut a lot, so it's interesting in the writing process trying to determine what is minimalism and then what is, you know, too minimalistic and too redacted. Because for me, I don't want to have to sit there and explain everything about a character or everything that they've done and what's led them to where they are now. I think their actions should speak louder than their words. I think you can see that in comics like Invincible, where, yeah, you've got Mark talking about his ideals and what he wants, but then you have to look at the reality of what he does, and sometimes it's contradictory. And, you know, it's kind of great like that, because in life it's the same way. There's a lot of things that we say that we would do or try to do as people, or, you know, have done in the past, but then when we're faced in the moment with a decision, often our actions kind of just happen. There's not much we can do. You can try for certain, but it doesn't matter what you say, it's what you do. I think that's kind of one of the bigger things about Eleanor Threat. She's going to do and say some things, but her actions are definitely going to show why she is the way that she is, and explain just who that person is. And I think it's kind of interesting, but because she's got this relationship with our main character that will maybe compare and contrast a little bit with what she was and what she is now. Just dancing around the plot as much as I can. How long have we been recording? Only an hour? That's fantastic. That means we get to do this whole panel. I don't have to worry about it. I was gonna do it anyway. I just, you know, didn't want this to be a really long video. I edited the 4-hour-long scripting video, and let me tell you, there's never been a video I've hated more. That took way too long. I'm sorry. Alright, so let's draw these vines. You'll notice I'm using these kind of scratchy, can you see? Yeah. Scratchy, quick lines. I've basically locked my wrist and I'm just moving the pen any which way along this path, trying to get the randomness and the organic shape of this vine as it comes in. Trying to think about, like, Swamp Thing and what he looks like. Kind of texture that I want. Also, the vines that I've seen out in the woods used to swing on as a kid. In case you couldn't tell, I grew up outside. You know? Played in the woods, climbed trees, all that good stuff. I think that part of my life has helped me with observation, seeing things out in the world, remembering what they look like, what they smell like. I think I also have a pretty good memory for stuff like that. I forget what it's called, but I looked it up one time. I think it's like hyperphantasia or something like that. And I don't remember everything about it, so don't get mad at me, but I think it has something to do with, like, you don't remember things in, like, an academic sense. In a sense where you're, you know, like, you don't have photographic memory or can remember, like, everything anyone's ever said, but it's like, if they say, oh, imagine an apple, you can not only imagine that apple, but you imagine the taste, the smell, the shape, the feel of the apple very vividly. Same with the vine here. I'm thinking about how it moves in the wind. My apologies there. I got interrupted there. Somebody walked in and needed my help for something. So, got a little distracted, but it's okay. We're back. That doesn't count as a cut, right? Right? Anyway. I think what I was saying before is that it's important to learn to observe. Learn to look at your surroundings and your experiences. How you can apply that to your art. Beyond just the typical. Beyond just, oh, I saw a lot of buses when I grew up, so I'm going to draw buses. Or, oh, you know, when I was growing up, this was a big political issue or something like that. Finding a way to enjoy those things in your life, maybe that aren't exclusive to you, or maybe you're not even unique to you, but are a part of your human experience. I think that's something that will set apart your art from everybody else's. Especially now, there's so much in art that's representational and abstract. Not saying that all abstract art is bad. I don't think that everything has to be a one-to-one. But I think art resonates a lot more with people that can understand it, can identify with it as a person, as a human. Beyond, again, maybe their background or how they, you know, grew up or who they are as, you know, person, gender, or political standing, or anything else like that. Looking more at, you know, something that we all have, something in the soul that, you know, causes us to stop when we see a sunset, causes us to enjoy certain things in life and nature and even in mundane parts of our lives. You know, I think that's something that, like, Studio Ghibli movies get a lot. I think that's something that they're very good at, is taking, you know, somebody's cleaning a room or cooking a meal or riding a train, and it just looks so beautiful. It's something that you want to stop and look at, even though it's something that's mundane. Nothing's happening. Part of that's part of the storytelling of whatever the film is, the pause, but I think it also comes down to Miyazaki understanding that bit of the human soul that we all have and we can all enjoy, and communicating that feeling through his art on screen. And I think that's something that when I'm working I want to try to convey. And it doesn't have to be positive vibes. It could be sadness, it could be anger, it could be a lot of different things. I think that's why certain things work, because they're just fill in the blank. Like John Wick. The John Wick franchise is so funny to me because it's like, I enjoy John Wick a lot, but like, it's 3 hours of man being angry about and sad about his dog and wife. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I don't think it's, any comparison to Spirited Away or any other Studio Ghibli movie, but you can still see that basic formula that's worked so well for those movies is, we're not trying to go for any message other than man is mad about his loss. And this is how far he'll go, and these are the things that we wish we could do when we lose things that are important to us. But it's something that he can do because he's in a movie. And it's not at any point a message to people to go out and do those things. I think that's what people get mixed up a lot about with, like, oh, video games promote violence or whatever. No, it's an escape. It's fantasy. That's why working in this world is so fun, because you get to do things that you cannot do in real life, whether they're violent or whether they're just not possible physically, because it's escapism. I think so much of the time we want to have a certain level of realism, or we're afraid of people saying, oh, that doesn't make sense, or that's not, and we're afraid of getting fact checked. You do not have to be worried about that. Just make your world, make a level of escape. Make something that you and your readers can enjoy. It's something that they can enjoy, not because they check a certain box or they, are an exact clone of whatever your characters are or your world is. Make it because they're a human and they can enjoy that human experience. Unless you're a xenomorph. If you're a xenomorph watching this, first of all, oof. Hi, welcome to the channel, don't eat me. Secondly, just make comics for whatever aliens like. I guess xenomorphs would be interested in making comics about eating humans. Or I don't know, maybe a xenomorph comic would be, the one xenomorph that doesn't want to eat humans. He wants to try to be more than that. I don't know. Thoughts that go through my head while drawing vines. Man, I am... These great textures. I wish the whole comic looked this good right now, as this does right now. Not that this is by any means my best page, but I think it's been a long time since I've had this level of concentration and focus. And I've just been able to sit down and draw on a page without really any, well, except that one interruption that we just had. But, no, it's just, I don't know. It's very chill for me right now. Because I don't know, it's kind of the perfect mood and mode for me. Kind of focus on these sort of things. I think the amount that I've been drawing recently has been helping. For me, when I work, I need a certain amount of discipline, structure, and just in general, a good schedule. That's what helps me get things done. Not just for production or YouTube or anything like that, but for actual just like getting things done. I won't get things done if I don't have a deadline. I won't get things done if I don't think about the entire process and how I want to do things. Even if, I don't have to have everything go right. I'm fine with the plan changing. But if I don't have a plan to begin with, if I don't have a goal, a lot of times I'll give up and those things won't get finished. There's a lot of projects where that's happened, and I'm not proud of those. I don't like how those things, turned out. Whether they got rushed to the finish line because eventually I did get on them, or, they got put off so long that eventually they got buried. So I have to have a certain amount of discipline for myself. Art school really helped me with that. Probably more than anything else that I learned in art school, that was the biggest thing. Making myself work. Finding out that, I work better under X, Y, and Z scenario. And that's, I think, the biggest thing with... So right now, there's a big thing against going to college. I'm kind of with that as far as, like, if you don't have the money, don't go to college. Because if you're just going to college for social, reasons, you don't need to go to college. If you're going to college because you think that's how you get a job, you're not going to get a job because you go to college. You just aren't. That's a lie. Always has been. Unless, of course, like, you're in the medical field or whatever. But, like, with art, you can learn a lot of that at home. I think what you will struggle to learn from home is deadlines, expectations, and critiques, which you will get from art college. Or at least if you have a similar experience that, like, I did. You can also get that, outside of art college. I just think those are some of the most important things that I think I learned there. Outside of just, techniques and other important things about art. But I look to those things daily. Learning how I learned. Learning how to learn. And understanding, how to recreate that in my own studio. How to make myself want to create. How to accept that sometimes that my work is not the best that it could be. Sometimes what I want isn't what's good for the project, isn't what's good for the art. Sometimes I have to accept that. And that's tough, that's something that took years, and being in college kind of helped fast track that for me personally. But I know some people, maybe you've already figured that out on your own. You don't have to go to college for that. Don't go to college for that. Or, you can find that other places as well. But in all my critique for college and, going or not, I think that's one aspect that for me personally I can't really argue. As far as, like, I did benefit from that. I benefited a lot from the people that I went to college with, and from their feedback, their willingness to help me out, their willingness to struggle alongside me. I think that was something that I couldn't have gotten from my room, from, where I was in the world and where I am now. So, I don't know. That's probably deeper introspection than you were looking for, but there you go. Sometimes it takes a while to get used to these shaky lines. I'm used to, like, nice flowing ink. Nope. Going in and we're just getting shaky with it. Taking my arm, letting it do what it wants. following the general path that I laid out for it, but all in all, I'm going for this organic look, and organic things are usually not smooth. I've seen a lot of worksheets for how to do textures. I think there's some good in that, but I think overall, taking a pen, just a pen, no work with a pencil, and exploring how you move your wrist, how you move your fingers, how you hold your pen, how that changes what your work looks like is more important. Because if you get used to that and you get used to that idea, you know, you'll discover what kind of things you can make, what kind of textures, what kind of line widths or weight, kind of effects you can make on your own, because you won't need, I don't know, I think so much of training is like, one of the things that we used to do is like draw this box, and I was just, you know, it's okay, and I know how to draw boxes very well now, but what I wish they had us do was just force us to make, force us to figure out on our own through just raw practice. Just throw yourself into the deep end. I understand that doesn't work for everybody. You know, it's kind of intimidating. But so much that you'll learn. Your brain is so good at surviving. It is if you let it, I should say. I've known a lot of people where they've tried to work in that way, or they've had to work in that way, where they are thrown into the deep end and they shut down. I understand there's, you know, different people in this world, but they, and, you know, different complications with everybody. But just to shut down without having any clue what to do when the unexpected happens, when you're forced to use your skills, when you're forced to make yourself try something new or do something that you've never done before, when you're out of your comfort zone, you know, the ability to operate under those circumstances is just so valuable. I probably stressed it enough in the last video, but I want to stress it a bit more. That's something that helps me every day, because, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to do some aspects of this comic or the other comic that I'm working on. And that's so exciting to me, because I get to figure out how. And I might get it wrong, and that's okay. It'll be a little frustrating. Might even, you know, get me really mad, and I'll have to take a breather for a little bit. But that's the thing, you know, you gotta experience life. You gotta live. Sometimes that means failure. Sometimes that means not knowing what you're going to do, not being able to, you know, have all the answers. Sometimes it means falling flat on your face, and you just have to laugh at it, because that's life. I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes I have to throw my head back and laugh at where I'm at and how I've gotten there. just how it is, you know? To err is human. If you're not out there making errors, then are you really living as a human? I think so much of our time we spend worrying, whether that's, you know, what people will think of us, whether, you know, we're living up to other people's expectations, or we're worried about what certain influences in our lives will think. I think we're worried about the future, what certain actions we take, where that will lead us. I think we're worried about opportunities that may never show up, or have already showed up, or we're still waiting on. And we're afraid. We're so afraid of living, of trying. I know people, they play video games like that. They're like, I haven't ever gotten past this part because I want to look and I want to find everything in the game. And I'm like, it's a game. It's something that you can enjoy. It's something that you can come back to. Something you can play again. I understand life's not like that, but there's so much beyond just what we see. So many other things in play, and just it's arrogant when you worry and you think that your worries are justified, because you can't see everything about it. It's arrogant to think that you're the only one that's considered that possibility, the only one that's, you know, understood that. Again, don't live recklessly, don't think yourself, you know, invincible, but at the same time, don't limit yourself. Have a little bit of difficulty, have a little bit of hardship. It's okay. Obviously, don't make mistakes just for fun, but don't be afraid of yourself making a mistake. Take correction. Take that learning. Have fun with it. Some people, it's difficult for them. I've known people where their whole lives, the people, their parents, or maybe other friends or other influences in their lives, have pushed them to never, you know, have any regrets. Never have any kind of instance of lapse of judgment. There's a balance there, I think, where you should learn from others and your own experiences, and from, you know, obviously very bad things that can happen to people, and not think of yourself as the exception. But I think at the same time, there should be some grace for yourself as you begin to learn. I'm getting a little bit too deep, I think, in this video. Let me sum it up. When it comes to art, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to doing something you're passionate about, just sit down and do it. Don't worry about the mistakes, don't worry about the judgment, don't worry about anything. Just do it. Okay? There's just so many people out there that won't and never will. You need to be the one that does it for yourself. Okay? Okay. Sometimes I wake up ranty. I think this has been one of those days. Oh well. I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes my voice changes after a period of time of talking. It's an old accidental habit I picked up as a kid. I would do voices constantly. Still do. One of the unfortunate side effects of that is sometimes my voice will slip into a different accent or a different tone without me noticing. That's happened sometimes. I'll be at like the drive-thru, and by the time I go from the ordering machine to the window, I've changed 3 or 4 accents, and I'm trying to find my normal one. I'm like, thank you. You know, I'm trying really hard to sound normal, and I don't know why nothing I say sounds normal anymore. I blame that on Bugs Bunny. All the other cartoon characters that can just shift personalities or, you know, put on a costume and become somebody else. Do that all the time as a kid. I think that's part of why I can come up with dialogue so fast when I'm writing these. Just kind of switch in your mind who you're thinking or how you're thinking. Like for me, I just think, alright, if I'm Dakin, what do I say? Or if I'm, you know, Feldrin or Eric or any of the other characters that I draw. It's just a quick swap into kind of a personality I've cooked up for them. As long as I understand what that personality is beforehand, usually just, yeah, kind of trade places for a little while, think about them, think about the scenario from their perspective. Not every time, but most of the time. No. I think one of the things that digital art will make you start doing is you have to be concerned with, oh, yeah, all my lines connecting, or all my shapes, you know, all the way stuck at the end. I don't care so much about that right now. Because one, I can fix it later if it's really a problem, but I think you can get a nice texture by having incomplete lines. And by that, having a line like here, having a line here, not bothering to connect them. Like here I've got dots. That gives me a nice texture. I don't care if it's all the way connected or not. I've had people critique my art before, and I'm fine with them critiquing my art however they see fit. But one of the things that I received that I thought was kind of interesting was like, well, these lines don't connect. And I'm like, yeah, they don't. That's okay. They saw it as a negative, but for me, I was just like, you know, that was kind of intentional, but whatever. Something you gotta keep in mind with critique is you shouldn't have to talk. You shouldn't have to explain anything. Unless, of course, like, you know, if they're looking at a page that's out of sequence, or if they're looking at something that requires a little bit of context, you know, you can explain. Or you can explain your tension maybe afterwards. But I find the most helpful critiques are ones where whoever's giving it doesn't have to hear the artist's voice, because the artist's voice is represented in the piece. Saw a clip from a movie on Instagram. The person didn't see fit to tell me what the movie was, so I can't reference the movie. But it was this kid talking about art, and his teacher's like, well, what's your connection with it? And he's just like, I just think that I like the colors and the shapes of the painting that I made. And she's like, well, no, you have to connect with it. You have to explain your view and your psychology or philosophy behind it and all of that. And it's like, I don't want to. I don't think that's important. I think, you know, conceptual art is stupid. I think it's more important to create something beautiful, because then the audience can determine what they want to think about it and what they can see in the piece, rather than having to stand there and act uppity. And I agree with that. I think it's important that you're communicating without being there. Otherwise, what's the point of art? What's the point? If I have to talk to explain to you, you know, what I've drawn, what's the point of art? What's the point of drawing it? Why not just talk? If I can convey my thoughts that way. That's why I think artists like Duchamp and others that are into ready-made art or making conceptual modern sculpture or modern quote-unquote art, like, it's, you know, and then calling it, you know, a critique on this or capitalism or whatever, you know, political point they read about in a magazine or online before, you know, the week before, like duct taping a banana to the wall, or even eating that banana and calling that art, you know. That's not art. You weren't enriched by that. You didn't learn something from that. You didn't connect with that on a human level. I'm ranting again. But, you know, it's... Why does Norman Rockwell's art still resonate? Why does, you know, other artists, even more loose artworks, like the watercolorist whose name I forget at the moment, you know, a lot of times, or even surreal artists, why does that connect with us rather than, you know, a banana duct taped to the wall or a toilet with somebody's name? I think it's just a shame. I think it's a waste. I think it's a scam. And I think so many people, it's like wine. People want to have their little clubs where they feel better, smarter, and more rich, more refined than anyone else. That's not art. Art's about expression. Art's about feeling. Art's about sharing something that humans have that other things don't. They want to be able to trap an experience on a canvas, trap a feeling just for a moment, so that you and the artist can both feel that way at the same time. I think that's real art. I don't think all that other stuff, that's not art. It's a sham. I said I was gonna not rant anymore, at least as I told myself I wasn't in my head, and here I am again, ranting. That's what you get when I stop scripting the videos. Start just talking out my own butt. I don't know if you like these videos yet or not. The first one's just released, and I haven't seen too much about it because I haven't been looking at the analytics, so who knows. You might like it, me just talking randomly about whatever pops in my head. Or you hate it. Who knows? One thing I've learned from inking, when it comes to organic shapes, you never want to spend too much time trying to refine the details. What I mean by that is, just like here, this bit I just did there, it's a quick little easy set of lines. And, you know, I'm not gonna go in there and refine every little dot or every little, you know, idea there. Because it's an organic shape, and by organic shape I mean like a plant or some grass or, you know, a tree or a rock. Those things I don't spend too much time trying to figure out all the little details or all the little obscurities. I don't look up, oh, it's sandstone, does it need to look like this? No, if it's not important to the story, I'm not going to do that. And the reason is you can look at a shape and understand it without having to see all the details. You can simplify it into a texture and into a shape. And, you know, you don't even need the color sometimes. And you'll know. Oh, it's a vine. Oh, it's a tree. Oh, it's a, you know, and that's where style comes from. How you simplify, how you take that tree, how you take that rock, how you take that, whatever you're drawing, organic or otherwise, and how you've simplified it and translated it in your composition. That's how you make a style, and that comes from just years of practice mixed with your own interest, mixed with the influences that you have in your artwork. And not just in inking, just in general, that's how that works. I know for me, I've got a lot of background in watercolor. I've got a decent amount of background, you know, watching, you know, some anime, reading manga, but then also like a lot of comics and the way that they did backgrounds, you know, back in the, I say back in the 2000s, but to me that doesn't seem so long ago. Although I've just been informed that YouTube is something like 20 years old, I think. Just not encouraged to hear that while thinking about my age, but it's alright. So we've got Dagon here slicing through these vines, in case you couldn't tell. I want to make sure that that's clear in the artwork. I want to make sure that it makes sense, because that's the whole point of this page. She raises her hand, she summons the vines, he cuts through the vines. Easy as that. Not a difficult page as far as concept goes. Sometimes you'll write, you know, a character feels this way, or a character experiences this, and then you go to draw it and you're like, I don't know. Like, I was watching Summit of the Gods, which is a pretty good movie. I would recommend. Very good animation. Pretty decent story too. And one of the things is they're climbing up Mount Everest, and one of the characters starts to have migraines because of the lack of oxygen. And the way that they showed him having a migraine, and you can only do this in animation, really. And that's why I thought it was, so well done. They were really using the medium to show off to tell their story in the way that only that medium could. And the way they animated it was, I think they just had the whole screen kind of get tinted red, and then I think his colors were reversed or something like that. I forget exactly how they did it, but they coupled that with this, ear piercing sound, and like immediately you knew, what was happening. And it's like I was thinking about that like in comics. It's like I couldn't quite do it the same way. Obviously, I wouldn't have sound, but having him like grab his head and turn the screen red, that's something I could try if I wanted to convey something similar. That's what I think about a lot of times when I'm watching movies. I think about if I had to, translate this scene into another medium, would it work? So a lot of times I'm thinking about comics, and if I can translate something into comics. I was watching it's not The Informant. It might be The Informant. I forget what movie it was, but I was watching this one scene, and they had such a great soundtrack and such a great moment with the characters and the expressions, but everything was very subtle, and it was difficult to really tell, like, if just the way that it was cut and the content. I don't think that scene could have been done in any other way effectively. I think that was something that was exclusive to the screen. And I don't think a book could tell it any better. I don't think that a comic could tell it any better, or a novel adaptation. I think that's the cool thing about certain directors and certain artists, and if they understand the medium that they're working in, they can use it to heighten their story. That's why I think so much of the time Americans are limited in their storytelling as it relates to animation, because we still see animation as, it's a kids thing, because that's how it was introduced. We had Walt Disney show up, and all of our best animation was kids animation. And it's such a shame, because so many cool stories that can be told, and it can only be told in animation. Case in point, if you look at like Akira. Back in the day, that was one of the first anime that really showed up in America, and people didn't really know how to take it, I think, at the first time it came out, because they thought, it's animated, it's for kids, right? No, it's about young people, so it's about teenagers or whatever. Not really. Same with like Ghost in the Shell and Cowboy Bebop, stuff like that. You're telling a story, and trying to convey a certain feeling or level of artwork that can only be told in the medium, the art medium that is animation. And in America, we don't do that. In America, it's like, it's animated, so it's for kids. Spider-Verse, while I would say still for kids, also communicated on several levels to people of all ages. And it did that because it understood that animation is an art medium. Same with like Puss in Boots, same with like The Wild Robot, and several other really good animated films. But I feel like we're still so slow to that, even as like even as understanding it as a medium, I guess. There was I don't know. I think there's just like there's a lack of willingness to consider it as a medium. Whereas in like You know, like I remember watching Jinro in the Wolf Brigade. And it was interesting to me because it's like, okay, the director could have done what most of the rest of the series had done and made a video or like an actual movie, live action, or they could have, made several other creative decisions as to the medium of how they wanted to release this, but they decided on animation because of, how they wanted the story to play out. I felt just looking at how they worked, and I have to agree with them. That was the best decision, just based on how they wanted to tell their story and all the things that they wanted to do that they couldn't do otherwise. Some bands, like I'm thinking of Linkin Park, they would use animation for their music videos because they knew you can do things in animation that you can't do in real life. You can do a lot of things in a music video, but you can't have the same connection to your viewer. And unfortunately, in America, we often dismiss that for that connection as, oh, that's for kids. And it's such a shame. I really truly wish we could get past that and start seeing more projects. And I'm not saying that like every animation has to be for adults or has to be something, psychologically deep or artful. But I think there's a level that we just haven't attained yet in communication artistically as it relates to animation that maybe other people have. Doing a good job not ranting. Went a whole 5 seconds. Alright, let me do this so I don't forget. These vines are making me happy. Just how they look. Sometimes you'll find that when you're inking, something you've made in the penciling stage doesn't make sense. As the inker, you have a decision to make there, whether you will stick with the pencils or what you are thinking of right now as the inking stage. Personally, I think, and again, this is coming from somebody who hasn't had to work with anybody in this process, but for me, I value my decision and my thought as the inker more than my decision as the penciler. I understand that the penciler has ideas and probably a way that they want to communicate, and I'll do my best to do that. But if I find that they're not accurate, or if I find that they're not communicating in a way that I think will work for the piece, I'm going to ink the way that I think is more better for the page, I guess. But I am the penciler, so I can get away with that. If you are working with somebody, don't just be like, I'm the inker, I can do what I want. That probably won't go over well. Especially if you're doing like traditional inking over someone's actual pencils. Which don't do that, like just scan, honestly. I've still got the original pencils for this kicking around somewhere else. In case I do mess up. Got another scan ready to go. I can go to Office Depot, get another print done. But I think this page is looking okay. I don't think I'll have to do that. So much of the time, I think people will give up too soon. That's not to say that, you know, oh, they didn't make a mistake. They made an improvement. Well, sometimes, you know, maybe they did make a mistake, but they just need to finish the drawing and then either, you know, scan it and then redraw the part that they messed up, or, you know, maybe they do need to start over, but they'll learn something in the process of finishing that page that maybe will bring up, you know, they can make the mistakes once, and then that'll be the first draft, and then the next draft they do, they can already know what lies before them, rather than just make a mistake, start over, make another mistake, start over, make the same mistake, start over. Just try to push as far as you can until the page is utterly ruined, and then take those experiences and start work. I say utterly ruined and laugh. I know I've done the exact same thing. Where I've... Oh, I can fix this. I've got this. Oh, it's okay. And then, it's not okay. Where's the whiteout? I just want to refine this shape a little. A little stronger of an angle. Nice. Very nice. To fill or not to fill? That is the question. Filling in areas of your drawing was always going to be a difficult choice. Well, maybe it's not difficult for you, but I always find it's difficult to find that nice balance between what's too much and what's too little. I do like the effect that I get, though, when I fill in large areas with just black ink for the shadows. It's difficult sometimes to understand where a good place to stop is. Because to me, again, you're making shadows. And you don't want, you know, the person to be in perpetual twilight, and you don't want to make things difficult for when you're trying to, you know, give form to your drawing later with color. But at the same time, it's a comic, so there has to be a certain level of shading. It's also, you know, style. I know, like, looking at Mick Mignola's pages, or Mike Mignola, I should say. Is it Mick or Mike? I think it's Mick Mignola. The guy who draws Hellboy. His pages are always very, very heavily shaded with very large, blocky, dark shapes. And I love those pages. I love how those look. I'm always nervous to make those kind of pages. Not because of the amount of ink. I love the idea of doing it. I just hate the idea of going overboard and then having to go in and erase. But by erase I mean digitally, you know, after I scanned it in. You know, but if you can do that, you know, feel free, go for it. Just as long as you're not losing too much information in your drawings. That, I think, would be the ultimate test, is if, as long as everything still communicates, then you're fine. If you start to get to the point where you can't tell what you're drawing, you know, then maybe you should take a step back. Clean off my pen here. I've got some dry ink caked on there. It's a trick I learned. Oh, shouldn't put the X-Acto up to my face. I don't know if you saw that. I just yawned and went to go like this, and I had an X-Acto pointed at my nose. Sometimes I'm dumb. It's a trick I learned, though. Watching a Proco video from a Marvel artist. I forget the name. Hi, editing me. Put the name of the artist I saw in Proco. Maybe even the video. I know it's not supposed to be edited that much, but could you do that for me? I feel like crediting them is important. But you take an X-Acto knife and you just scrape off the old ink. I used to just do it with my hands, and you can tell, like, my hands get pretty gnarly by the end of this process. Yeah, even this one. I don't really notice or mind, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that's kind of smart. Just take an X-Acto and scrape it off rather than using your hands or trying to wet the ink on a paper towel, which is what I had been doing before. Yeah, it's not a bad method, but the X-Acto knife is just a lot better. But then he's a pro comic artist, so it stands to reason he knows more than I do. Looks good. I think we're pretty close. Pretty close done. I don't know if this is a video. This video was a success or not. I feel like I just kind of ranted the whole time, didn't talk about inking. But then so much of my inking process is just try. Just throw down ink until it looks good. But yeah, it doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad. I guess I'll finish up this line here. Yeah. Straight line, here we go. Hold my breath. It's not perfect. That's okay. But you thought I was kidding, I wasn't gonna hold my breath. Still hold my breath sometimes when I'm drawing lines like that. Long, straight lines like that. It's difficult sometimes. Difficult a lot of times. Well, the good news is I have this sword as a 3D model, so I'll probably be able to make it look a little better. Although it's not bad. It's not terrible, I should say. It is bad. Look, you can see where my fingerprints have been. Oh no, it's smudging! The paper's ruined! Yeah, that's okay. It's not like this is getting sold. Although if it was, I feel like that would drive up the price. Or I would have to go through and remove my fingerprints from it, otherwise people could steal my identity. That's how that works. Reads alright. Okay. I think I'm gonna call this one good. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was educational or at least entertaining for you. I'm sorry if I got a little ranty or if this went a little long. But here's how I ink traditionally and what my thought process is and how I work, and yeah, so again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, go make something awesome.